Okay.
We are recording.
Yay. So should I just start with question one? Okay. So yeah, I'm really sorry about getting cut off, but would you mind sharing your isogenic story with us and kind of how you got started and where you are now?
Yeah, so I started like a lot of, the average person, really. I was a corporate medical device sales representative. I made good money. We had a good life. And I also had a strong fitness background, which you had kind of mentioned and alluded to before. So I was sort of accustomed to living out of Tupperware. I, prepped all my food, carried them around with me, and ate chicken and broccoli lukewarm out of my car every 3 hours every day. And, I just knew that was something that I couldn't maintain forever, but I really knew that I couldn't maintain that forever when I had my first daughter. And surely before my eyes, I had a brand new, human being speaking a language I didn't understand quite yet. And it would be noon and I hadn't brushed my teeth yet, probably hadn't showered in a good 48 hours. And I was asking myself, how the heck am I supposed to be on meal 3 or 4 right now? And things were very, very, very different for me back then. I just didn't know if anything existed out there in a convenient form that wouldn't compromise my beliefs and ethics and moral code around whole food nutrition. And I was right. I literally looked everywhere. And because of my background, I had access to pretty much every company out there. Every colleague that I had was involved in any other company in a very intimate way. So I had access to products. I was offered monthly stipends and free protein, and I would turn their labels over and say, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. There's just too much in here that I wouldn't ever put in my body. Therefore, I'm not going to compromise my integrity by telling the rest of America that they should too. So, I was pretty much lost and very disenchanted with the industry as a whole. But it wasn't until, by the grace of God, I was looking for a Super Bowl recipe for a healthy bean dip. And the most crazy thing, I chalked this up to a complete loss. I never thought I would be able to get my body back in a convenient way. And I was on Lori Harder's website looking for a recipe she had posted, and she was an acquaintance of mine. We had competed together. And I saw a blog entry about this company, Isogenics. And I said, well, let me take a look at this, and I looked at it for, a minute or two, and I reached out to her. I said, hey, did you just get sponsored by this company? Who's Isogenics? What do they do? They seem like they're kind of legit. And she said, no, we don't sponsor or endorse any athletes, but it's something that I love and I've learned to trust. And I'll never, ever, ever go back to what we used to do. And by saying we used to do, I knew that she was talking about the things that I was having such a hard time with. So naturally, I looked into it further. I said, okay, fine. I'm willing to give this a try because it literally looks like everything that I've been searching for. But I also see that it's moved on a model very similar to Visalis or any other companies out there in network marketing. And it's just not something that I'm interested in. And she said, completely fine. So I knew at that point that this was more of a privilege than an obligation for me to share or sell anything. Because honestly, I poo-pooed network marketing. I just didn't know enough about it to care, and I didn't really want to put anything additional on my plate as a new mom. But 3 days after I started using it, my body lit up in such a way that I hadn't experienced ever, ever. No matter how many ways I had, done this by the book, my body never felt this different. I might have looked the part before, but I never felt the part. So naturally, the first thing I wanted to do was make it a family affair. So I told David that whether he liked it or not, he was going to be using these products. And so I was smart enough to know that, well, I don't want to mess up my personal orders and order basket. And I just had mine shipped out. So maybe I should just open his own account. And so that's what I did. And then my sister-in-law wanted to try it because she had 50 pounds to lose. And then I had a colleague from work jump on my link and do the exact same thing and order a 30-day. And in the very first week, I got an email from Isogenics Corporate saying, congratulations, thank you for sharing the gift of Isogenics. This week you've made $368 or whatever it was, and here's how you can further your business. And I was like, is this a mistake? Like, are these Isobucks? Or am I going to get free product? I don't get it. So I reached out to Lori and I said, hey, I know I completely, put my hand out or up, so to speak, when you had mentioned the model that this was on. I was like, but I have an email that says I made money and there's no way to access it. And she goes, there will be a way to access it. You'll get it in the mail. And every time that you share it just the way that you did, you'll receive more money. And I was like, you're kidding. Like, that's it? So for the first year, no strategy, no business plan, really no idea what this was. We just shared it, like just told people that asked. If somebody mentioned that they were having a hard time or struggling with their nutrition, I would mention it. And we just became what we call sponsor monsters, and we sponsored a lot of people, but really had no business acumen. So it wasn't until the end of that year, we were enrolled in the ISA Derby, which many of you may or may not know, but it was a contest that Isagenix used to run. So kind of like the championship challenge they're doing now, they ran derbies. And this derby was to Maui, and we'd never been to Hawaii before. So Chris Harder, Lori's husband, said, hey, you guys would be really great at this. You're enrolling a lot of people, and with some help, with some strategies, you could win this trip. So we said, okay, great. So we got on this team, and he said, by the way, we've never lost one, and we're always in first place. And I was like, okay, so now you've just turned my competitive buttons on, and I wanted to win this. So not only did we win, but we like blew out all the points in history for a derby and won this trip to Maui. But during that trip, or during that incentive, we hit executive and hit some bonuses. And I was sitting in the airport to go to another business trip for my company, and Chris Nish called me, and he said, hey, Angelique, it's Chris Nish from Isagenix corporate headquarters. How are you? And I was like, I'm good. I don't know. Who are you? And he said, well, I'm just calling to let you know that this month in this leadership pools, you've made $5,000. And I hung up the phone, and I was like, that's like equivalent to me logging into my bank account and finding money. Like, you just don't find $5,000, and you just don't ignore it either. So I told David, I was like, we might need to go to one of these events. As much as I hate to admit it, we might need to go. So I called Chris, and I said, look, I hear that you have this New Year kickoff thing coming up, and I'm very reluctant to go. I've been to every sales national convention known to man in corporate America. And if there's a bunch of weird people walking around and flashing buttons saying, lose weight now, ask me how, you can count me out. And he said, I promise it will be the most classy, well-produced event that you've ever been to. And if it's not, I'll pay your way. I was like, all right, pal, put your money where your mouth is. So we went, and I sat in the back seat, back row of New Year Kickoff 2013, and it lit a fire in me. They say there's a day that you get into Isagenix, and there's a day that Isagenix gets into you. And that was the day that Isagenix got into me. And I looked at my husband, and I said, that's it. We're going to go home and take the wheels off. Like, we can't not do this, because I had a 1-year-old at the time that I knew that I was going to tell she could be anything she wanted to be in this world. And I was over here doing something I didn't want to be, doing a job I didn't want to do, having what somebody in corporate America told me that I was capable of having versus what I knew I was valued. And that I was now able to say, this is what I'm going to value myself at this year. And after I up-level that, I'm going to change that again. So it just was a completely different philosophy that I had almost forgotten. Like, I had forgotten what I was here for, and that reminded me. So in a 5 minutes or whatever, I told my whole Isagenix story, but that's what's led us here. And quite honestly, we're not different than anybody else. We just made a decision.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I love what you were saying about, like, this is where I'm valuing, and then you can go up and up, because, like, there's really no limit with this company. Whereas other companies, you can just get stuck at the same place, and then there's no way to move up. Mm-hmm. So that's really powerful. And you kind of started to uncover some answers to the next question I had for you is, what does Isagenix mean to you? It's clearly been a lot for your life. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's done everything for, there's a lot of canned answers I could give you. Yes, it's family to us, and yes, it's freedom to us. But it also means to never live with regret ever again. Mm-hmm. And that means regret in my body. That means regret in missed experiences. That means regret in not having the right options or enough options for my family. That means regret in not doing what I always thought I wanted to do. I know that I'm going to do this forever. You couldn't offer me $10 billion to stop or go somewhere else, like 10 billion with a B, 100 billion. Like, you just couldn't, because this company is aligned with my values. It's aligned with everything that I know to my core of who I am. And they do the exact same thing in their homes. And that's something very special that you don't see. You know, most people get up and go to work every day and they have to align themselves with something because they have to, and they have to make ends meet. But at the end of the day, they put their head down at night and something doesn't feel right, you know, and I don't want to ever have to feel that again. I don't want to ever, you know, sit across the desk from somebody and hand in a resume going, this is so against everything that I know. I just don't want to do that. And I'll do anything I have to do for the rest of my life to ensure that I never have to do that. And so that I teach my daughters the same thing, not because of the words that are falling out of my mouth, but because of the action that they saw me in along the way.
Totally. I love that. The next question I have for you goes back to celebration. So you opened celebration and you seriously moved everyone in that room. Like you had 15,000 people standing and cheering, and then you had them sitting in their seats crying. Everyone's like having tears down their face. And it's just because your message was so powerful. And one of the statements that really stuck with me, and I know it's stuck, I know Lisa Lupo made a comment about it, and it's stuck with a lot of people, is you said, clear is the new black. Mm-hmm. And for anyone who wasn't at Celebration, or even if you were, and would you mind kind of explaining what that means to you and what you were talking about there?
Yeah. It's actually a really intimate story. So I lost my mom a year ago, July 19th. And that was a very long, hard battle. And for those of you that were there, you know, I kind of touched on it. But the day before she died, I went outside, you know, of my home in New Jersey with her. And I literally processed every possible human emotion you could imagine. I mean, I had numbed out for so long caring for her and watching her go through this over the years that I numbed out the good too, because I was trying to numb all the pain that she was in and the pain that I was feeling as a result of watching it. And finally, I just had this day of sort of disgust of what she was going through. And I went outside and I kicked the dirt. I mean, I literally went out and kicked the dirt. And I looked crazy. I mean, I was walking through my old childhood neighborhood and talking out loud to God like this, just out loud. And people were like, this lady's off her rocker. But I was just like, that's it. You got to take her home. Like you got to take her home. No one deserves to be in this amount of pain. But if you're going to take her home and I'm going to process this, I need you to help me process it and then come back with more courage and more clarity than I've ever had in my entire life. And the reason why is because in the pockets of our day and all of the stuff that was going on with our business, as much as we've grown, we've been operating at like 75% of our potential because we have been going through so much as a family that we could never be all in. Every 90-day action plan, I was like, all in but 1 foot out, because I didn't know where I'd be. I didn't know where my mom would be through her treatments. I didn't know what state I'd be in caring for her. You know, so there was always this overwhelm. And the next day she died. So there was this weird guilt that came with that, going, oh my God, I wanted her out of pain and I asked you to take her. And then the next day you took her, like now she's gone. And then all of a sudden I was clear. Like I was clear on so many things. Like she gave me a gift. And every day, at least a few times a week for the last year, I have woken up at 2 or 3 in the morning with this download, like a sentence, a thought, whatever. And typically I would lay there and think about it and say, oh, I'll remember it tomorrow. But I wrote every single one of them down, and I'll show you on my phone where they are. And I got a phone call from Travis Garza. For those of you that don't know him, he's Mr. Wonderful. I got a phone call from Travis Garza in April when I was there with our team for a trip that we had set up. And he had told me he wanted, you know, me to do the why this year. But he also wanted it to be a different kind of why, that he didn't want to be the why where we just get up and tell our stories and people are moved to tears, but then they don't know what to do with their life. And I opened my phone on all the notes that I wrote, and I had my keynote.
Wow.
And I knew that was the message that I had to give. And Of course, they were all out of order. I mean, they're just random thoughts on a note on my phone. And I had to put it together like a jigsaw. And that was overwhelming. You know, I had to find the four corners in the end. And I just had to ask myself, what do I want them feeling when they walk away? And the answer was clear. I want them clear. I want them so clear that they are clear on who they are. They're clear on what they believe in. They're clear on where they're going. And they are clear on the fact that it is non-negotiable. And as for those of you who were there, you probably remember me saying that. And so I just kept saying in my very first meeting with corporate over what I wanted to say. I'm like, you know what? Clear's the new black. Like, let's just lay it all out. That's what I want them to know. And John Raines goes, please tell me that's going to be your title slide. And I'm like, well, shit, it is. I mean, like, it is. That's just going to be the title. So I backed into it. So for you guys that were there to receive it, it started at the end. I started with my end title slide, clear as the new black, and then I backed everything into that. I took everything I have from there, and there's probably another keynote in there because there's so many thoughts on that. But, you know, I just had to know, like, what do I want them walking away from, you know, feeling this? I don't want them to feel overwhelmed. I don't want them just emotional. I don't want them just moved or just involved in my story. I didn't even want to tell my story. And that's why I told it during the pen exercise. I'm like, how am I going to get them to actually feel what it feels like in life? And I was like, well, here's where I'll tell my story. So for those of you that were there to receive it, just know that when you're tackling something of that size and magnitude, because it was never about me. I didn't want to go into that and leave feeling like everyone said she was awesome. Like, I could care less about that. I wanted to know that you all walked away clear. I wanted you to all walk away courageous. I wanted you to all walk away and know that I literally could feel your heart from there. And that was my number one goal, is so that you could walk away right, just like that. But when it comes to your vision in this company or your vision for your life, you got to back into it. The same way I backed into it from a title slide at the very end. Clear's the new black. Where do I build from there? I can see where I'm going. I know where I want it to end, but what are the details that get me there? And so you chunk it backwards and you work your way in. You back yourself into the vision. But if you don't know where you're going, it's like me handing you a jigsaw puzzle in a plastic Ziploc bag and say, here, put it together. Right? If you could just see it for a second, close your eyes and see the jigsaw puzzle for a second, and you're like, okay, I have an idea. And then you find the corners. And then you find the framework. And then you find the top and the bottom. And then you start building all the insides. So the keynote was built just that way. And I build everything else that way in my life. Like, where am I going? Does it align with who I am? Does it align with everything I believe in? And is that non-negotiable? Because if it doesn't align, then it doesn't work. It's a big hell no for me. I'm not going to do it. So if you're ever offered an opportunity or a distraction or something that you're not quite sure you should do or not do, if it feels icky, not like you're resisting it, but if it feels icky because it's not aligned with who you are, then it's a no. It's just a no. So clear as a new black for me means for you to be so clear on that nothing else matters, that it is timeless. Black is timeless, right? We always talk about black being, why do we say clear? Why do we say a color is the new black? Why did that slogan sit for so long? Because it's timeless. It doesn't go out of style and it doesn't compromise. Anything goes with it, right? So this clarity means that you don't have overwhelm. Where there is clarity, there's no overwhelm. And when you have that, you'll always know where you're going.
Totally. I love that. I don't know if you've been seeing the chat, but everyone's like, you totally did. Like, you about the clarity message. I think
oh, good.
You succeeded. I have the goosebumps.
Good. Oh, okay.
It was awesome. Really, really powerful. And it wasn't about you at all. It was just like such a powerful message. And I love how you said, sorry, I'm spacing. I love how you said that, I lost my thought. Crystal clear. I don't know. I'll go back to it if I think of it. But another question that I had that kind of piggybacks that, and if you feel it's too repetitive, I can just go to the next one. But why do you feel that clarity for everyone, regardless of what the clarity is around, why is that important for success in life?
Clarity. Why is clarity important? Because like I just said, like if you don't have clarity, that means there's overwhelm. Mm-hmm. And we can't operate in overwhelm. We just can't. Look, I talked about muscles of the spirit that day, right? So if I'm not operating in clarity and I'm not clear, then what's the opposing muscle to that? Overwhelm. If I'm operating in overwhelm, I'm overdeveloping something I don't want more of in my life. So if I'm overwhelmed and I keep exercising in overwhelm, I keep exercising in confusion, I keep exercising in fear and in doubt, then I'm not clear. Right? So I'll just continue to exercise something that I don't want. So why would we choose that? Right? So if you find yourself in any given moment going back to that home or like Tony Robbins talked about, your flavor of stress, your favorite flavor of stress, what is it for you? Because the second I got home, I felt resistance. It doesn't mean that just because I've gotten good at knowing and being aware that I don't experience it. It means I have it all the time. As a matter of fact, the more you elevate, the higher the call, the higher the crap. Like, it's just the way that it works. So I'm going to come home and feel it too. And so immediately there was overwhelm. Like overwhelm in my house, overwhelm with what we need to do with my kids, overwhelm with our business, overwhelm with the 90-day action plan, overwhelm with loose ends that we have here going on outside of Isogenics. It's always there. So it's just like, okay, I could either stay in this or I could tackle one thing at a time and get that overwhelm out of my life and be clear on where I need to go, because that's the only way that I'm going to be able to move the needle forward. And even when you are feeling that level of stress, just know that if you could at least do one thing today to move you closer to the clarity that you're looking for, to move you closer to the business goal, to move you closer to your body goal, whatever it might be for you, that's at least one thing in the right direction. And the better you get at that, the more you start exercising the right muscles.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go right into that as well, when you're just saying, whether it's a business goal or a health goal or whatever kind of goal, do you have any insight or any advice for anyone? Is there anyone on this call? Raise your hand if you're totally new to Isogenics, you don't even use Isogenics yet, or you're just started your journey. See some hands? Awesome.
All right.
So do you have any insight or advice for the newbies?
This will be the greatest experience in the world for you physically if you allow for it to be. If you're just open. I was like half open, but I was also desperate. I was quiet desperation, looking for something to help me gain more control in my life. Because I need to feel in control. I need to feel clear for me to be productive, for me to feel like I'm moving the needle forward. Right. So for me, it was just being open and grateful that holy smokes, there is something out there that can help me get my body back on track and my nutrition back on track. That was one. But two, in terms of the opportunity, if I had to do this all over again, I would only change one thing. And that would be that I would have been strategic from day one. That I wouldn't have, been closed off to the strategy or the business opportunity from the beginning. But here's what I wouldn't change. I wouldn't change the organic state of enthusiasm, compassion, and love that I had and sought other people for. Because what happens for a lot of people is they get dollar signs in their eyes, or the opportunity gets so big, and that how of the opportunity gets so big that it washes and drowns out their compassion. And then they start trying to just #recruit, just go after, because they get the taste of blood in their mouth, and they just go after trying to get people rather than serve and contribute to their lives. This is where we stand out always. And that's what I was saying on last Monday as well. It's like your spirit has to be enrolled, has to be. Like if it was just a map and just a strategy, that's why so many businesses fail. That's why so many things are so much hype out there, because it's just a strategy. There's no spirit, there's no love, there's no contribution, there's no service. And people will see right through that. I don't care how eloquent you are. I don't care how good of a salesperson you are. It's slimy. Don't make it slimy. But if you're going to do this, do it with your whole heart. You know, just do it with your whole heart, do it with your whole spirit, and do it openly, and knowing that there's always an opportunity that if you can just count down 3, 2, 1, open your mouth. There's somebody out there. I know for a fact right now, someone in the world is on their knees right now praying. They're looking for something. And it's our job to be able to have the right conversation and ask the right questions to get to the intimate details and the root of what that desperation is. But if we just here lose weight and point them into a 30-day, we're not serving them. We're only selling them. So serve people. Ask the right questions. Dive through those questions and find out why. Why do you want to lose weight? How much weight? Why is that number important to you? How will that change your life? What will that do with your relationships? What will be different? How will it enrich your relationship with your spouse? How will it enrich your relationship with your kids? Where would you go? If you had that kind of money, where would you go? Right? So remember, you got to dive into these things and knowing the root, and just always, always, always look to serve people. But you have to serve them with clear, concise solutions by getting clear, concise answers.
Wow, that was beautiful. I think that's a great way to kind of end the call. I know we're over a couple minutes. Did anyone have any questions or anything before we end the call? It's not every day we have Angelique on. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions. Thank you so much again for joining us on our call and sharing everything you did. Oh, is someone unmuted?
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to ask me questions. If you're going to do it now, right? Courage.
Yeah, exactly. I thought I heard someone unmuted, but maybe not. Okay. But yeah, also this week through Sunday, it's free membership. So if you're on this call and this really spoke to you, or you've still been thinking about Isagenix, please go back to the person that invited you to this call and get started. I mean, just like Angelique said, this is such an opportunity, and it will be the best decision you've ever made. So with that, yeah, Faith and Nicola, with that, I think we'll say good night, and we'll be back the same time. And the other Zoom link, we won't be using this one. This was just because of time. But we'll see you next week then.
Thank you, Angelique.
Yeah,
Mahalo.
so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great night.